Phoenix, deceased. Real name, Jean Grey. Occupation, adventurer, student, former fashion model. Identity, secret. Legal status, American citizen with no criminal record. Other aliases, Marvel Girl, Ms. Psyche, the Black Queen, Dark Phoenix. Place of birth, Annandale-on-Hudson, New York. Place of death, the blue area of the moon. Known survivors, John, father, Elaine, mother, Sarah, sister. Group affiliation, X-Men. Also briefly an unwilling member of the inner circle of the Hellfire Club. See Hellfire Club. First appearance, X-Men number 1. Final appearance, X-Men number 137. History. Jean Grey was the daughter of Professor John Grey of the History Department of Bard College in Annandale-on-Hudson, New York, and his wife, Elaine. When Jean Grey was 10 years old, she was playing with her best friend, Annie Richardson, when Annie was hit by an automobile. The emotion that Jean felt as she held her dying friend awakened her own latent telepathic powers. This traumatic episode left Jean in a withdrawn and deeply depressed state. Moreover, Jean discovered that she could not control her newly awakened telepathic abilities and had to isolate herself from other people to keep hold of her sanity. Finally, when Jean was 11, a psychiatrist recommended to Jean's parents that they consult a colleague of his, Professor Charles Xavier, who was himself a mutant with telepathic abilities. See Professor X. He explained to Jean, but not to her parents, that she was a mutant and treated her for several years. During this time, he erected psychic shields in Jean's mind so that she would not be able to use her telepathic abilities until she had achieved the maturity necessary for dealing with them. Simultaneously, he developed her until then latent telekinetic abilities, which enabled her to levitate and manipulate objects through psionic force. When Xavier had judged that Jean had reached a certain level of mastery of her telekinetic power, Xavier recommended to her parents that they enroll her in his newly established School for Gifted Youngsters, which, unknown to Professor and Mrs. Grey, served as the cover for the X-Men, a group of young, superhumanly powerful mutants being trained by Xavier to combat the threats posed by other mutants who used their powers against humanity. See X-Men. On entering the school, Jean Grey became the 5th member to join the X-Men and took the code name of Marvel Girl. The original 5 X-Men remained together for several years. When Xavier realized that he had to remain in isolation for a period of time in order to make preparations to thwart an attempted invasion by the alien Xenox, see alien races Xenox, he released the psychic barriers preventing Grey from using her telepathic abilities. Grey's added maturity and her years of practice in using her telekinetic powers had prepared her for handling her telepathic abilities, and she was able to use her telepathic powers from that point onward. Sometime later, after Xavier had recruited several new members for the X-Men, Grey and some of the other X-Men decided to leave the group in order to lead their own lives. Scott Summers, known as Cyclops, decided to stay in the X-Men. Grey and Summers had fallen in love with each other shortly after she first joined the X-Men, and their relationship had continued over the years. Shortly after leaving the group, Jean Grey and the other X-Men were kidnapped by Stephen Lang's Sentinels, see Sentinels, and taken aboard Lang's space station. After defeating Lang, the X-Men had to escape back to Earth aboard a spacecraft during a solar radiation storm. The craft's pilot had to sit in an area where he or she would be exposed to the lethal radiation. Gray volunteered to be the pilot, but while guiding the craft to Earth, the solar radiation finally proved to be too strong for Gray to hold back any longer with her powers. The radiation ravaged her body, killing her. But at the same time, the mutagenic effect of the radiation combined with Gray's own heightened emotional state at that time to both catalyze her ability to draw upon the full latent psionic potential of her mind and psionically tap into the Phoenix Force. This is a manifestation of a primal force of the universe which derives from the psyches of all living beings in the universe, and which therefore has limitless power. The Phoenix Force embodies emotion rather than intellect, specifically the passion to create or to destroy. Upon dying, Gray became a being of pure thought and became linked, apparently unbreakably, with the Phoenix Force. Gray then used her new powers to heal and resurrect her body, which she re-entered, although the strain caused her to be hospitalized. On becoming reborn, Gray took the new codename of Phoenix. Immediately upon Gray's recovery, she and the X-Men traveled to a planet in the Shi'ar galaxy. See, Shi'ar, where the crazed Emperor D'Ken was about to use the M'Kraan crystal to obliterate the cosmos. The crystal is a tesseract, a hyperdimensional construct within which this universe's scientific laws do not apply. Within the crystal, imprisoned by a magnetic stasis field and reduced to the size of a pinprick, lies the so-called neutron galaxy, which is composed of neutron stars whose supercompressed matter generates so much gravitational force that not even light can escape its surfaces. If the crystal were cracked open, the entire universe would collapse upon itself due to the neutron galaxy's tremendous forces, and the universe would be sucked into a black hole. D'Ken had triggered the destruction of the crystal, but Gray, as Phoenix, entered the crystal and, drawing upon the Phoenix Force through her love of the X-Men and determination to save the universe, repaired the disintegrating stasis field, thus saving the cosmos. As Phoenix, Gray rejoined the X-Men. Unfortunately, she had become Phoenix without having proper training for handling such power. At first, Gray's strong moral sense kept the Phoenix Force under control. After the episode with the crystal, her moral sense subconsciously prevented her from using her powers beyond a certain limit. But then, Gray fell victim to the psionic manipulation of Mastermind. See, Mastermind, who was attempting to prove his worthiness to become a member of the secret inner circle of the Hellfire Club by mesmerizing Gray into becoming its new Black Queen. Using a special device created by the White Queen, see, White Queen, Mastermind projected dreamlike fantasies into Gray's mind from afar, which slowly brought closer to the surface of her mind the dark desires which she, like most people, repressed deeply in their subconscious. Finally, upon confronting Gray in the Hellfire Club mansion itself, Mastermind forced those desires fully to the surface, submerging Gray's true personality, and Gray took on the costume and personality of the decadent Black Queen. Gray shortly thereafter freed her will from Mastermind's control, but because the Phoenix Force is linked to emotion, she could not fully free herself of the sinister side of her own personality which Mastermind had exposed. She helped free the X-Men, whom the Inner Circle had taken captive, and psionically induced temporary insanity in Mastermind. But as she and the X-Men escaped, she realized that the dark side of her personality, with the full power of the Phoenix Force behind it, was again taking hold of her, and without having had proper training, she could not repress it. Suddenly it overwhelmed her, submerging her true personality even more fully than before, and she became Dark Phoenix. Hungering for more energy, due to the limitations of still being in physical form, shortly after her initial activity as Dark Phoenix, she transported herself to the star Debari in the Shi'ar galaxy and caused it to go nova so that she could absorb its energy, thus wiping out the intelligent non-humanoid population of one of Debari's planets. Dark Phoenix next obliterated a Shi'ar starship which attacked her in retaliation for the non-humanoid's deaths. She returned to Earth and battled the X-Men. Cyclops tried to reason with her, appealing to the love she bore him in her normal personality, and thereby induced Gray's true personality to begin to rise again from beneath Dark Phoenix's insanity. Unfortunately, Xavier caused her to revert fully to Dark Phoenix again by attacking her, but Cyclops had laid the groundwork for Gray's cure, and so when Xavier used his full psionic power on Dark Phoenix to exorcise her insanity, Gray's nearly buried true personality was able to assert itself just enough to allow him to succeed. With Xavier's help, Gray had regained her true personality only a few hours after she had become the insane Dark Phoenix. She and the X-Men were immediately teleported aboard a Shi'ar starship commanded by the Shi'ar Empress Lilandra, who judged it necessary to obliterate Gray's powers entirely lest she revert to Dark Phoenix again. Believing that they could find a way to prevent Gray's reversion to Dark Phoenix, and that she should not be punished for her actions as the insane Dark Phoenix, the X-Men decided to fight against Lilandra's judgment in a trial by combat against members of the Shi'ar Imperial Guard. See Imperial Guard. During the fury of the battle, in which Gray actively participated, she again reverted to Dark Phoenix. Gray managed to reassert control of her true personality again, but realized that if she lost control even for a few seconds, she would turn insane again, and that without the proper training, she had no hope of maintaining that control. Moreover, once she turned insane, she would ultimately destroy the cosmos, probably by breaking open the M'Kraan crystal. Therefore, before the horrified eyes of her fiancé Cyclops, Gray telekinetically triggered a Kree energy cannon in the blue area of the moon, causing it to fire and totally disintegrate her. Through suicide, Jean Grey had both saved the universe and reasserted her humanity. Height, 5 feet 6 inches. Weight, 110 pounds. Eyes, green. Hair, red. Powers. Jean Grey was a mutant who, as Marvel Girl, possessed telekinetic abilities enabling her to levitate and manipulate objects psionically, and later also could use telepathic abilities enabling her to read minds, project her thoughts into the minds of others, and to project telepathic mental bolts which could stun the minds of others. As Phoenix, Gray's Marvel Girl powers were increased without limit. Phoenix could rearrange atomic and molecular structures in matter and could generate any form of energy in any conceivable amount. She could drain energy from sources as great as a nova. She could exist in any environment, travel through hyperspace, and create space warps. Her powers were limited only by the strength of her will and the breadth of her imagination. Often, when Phoenix utilized her powers, the Phoenix Force would manifest itself about her in the form of an enormous hawk-like bird composed of cosmic flame, which burned even in the absence of oxygen. At least when she was in the M'Kraan crystal, Phoenix could merge her body with this manifestation of the Phoenix Force.